you. Good morning, everybody, or afternoon, since it's a minute after 12. Welcome to our Accessibility Basics, our first session in this series. We're so happy to have you with us. We have over 500 people joining us today. So this is related to our digital accessibility compliance that we have to meet. And we wanted to start by giving you an overview of why you need to do this and some of the basic skills. Some of the sessions that we'll be having later on this semester will do deeper dives into the specific topics that you'll be introduced to this afternoon. Please post all your questions in the question and answers. You'll see a box at the bottom of your screen called Q&A. We'll be following them, and towards the end of the session, we will answer as many as we can, and then we will take all the rest of the questions and answers. And when we share the recording and the slides, we'll share the questions and answers as well. A reminder not to raise your hands because we won't see them. And also, for those of you who need closed captioning, please note that at the bottom of your screen, it does say captions with a CC. And for those of you who prefer to follow along by reading along, please use those closed captions. It's my pleasure today to introduce Serbi Luja, who is our accessibility subject matter expert. And behind the scenes, we have Nitesh, who's working with us with the slides. So Nitesh, if you would turn on the first slide and over to Serbi, and I believe we can see it, Nitesh. Thank you, and we're ready to go.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad to welcome you all to today's session. It's always energizing to be in a room full of people who really care about making education accessible and supportive for all learners. Today, we are diving into a topic that goes just beyond meeting compliance standards or ticking off check boxes. We are going to talk about how to create learning learning environments where every student feel recognized, supportive, and can truly set up to succeed. The session is full of practical tips, real-time examples, and straightforward strategies that you can start applying right away. So whether this is your first step into accessibility or you're looking to take your efforts further, this place is definitely for you. Next slide, please. Before we jump into today's session, I would love to take a moment to introduce myself and share a bit of my story that really connects to why accessibility means so much to me. Hello, everyone. I'm Surabhi Lohia, and I'll be your guide today as we explore the world of digital accessibility. I'm a mid-aged woman with fair skin tone, dark brown hair, and I wear plain glasses. I'm seated in front of a blurred Zoom background. Um, you must be wondering, why am I describing myself out loud here? The reason is simple. For people like me who cannot see, visual descriptions helps make things more inclusive and accessible. I lived a pretty typical life until I was 18, studying, using computers, just like anyone else. But everything changed when I was diagnosed with a progressive eye condition that caused me to start my vision eventually. Suddenly, I couldn't use a computer anymore. For a couple of years, it felt like a door had been shut. And then I discovered assistive technologies, especially screen readers. That moment was life changing. For the first time in years, I could actually access digital content again. It reconnected me with the world and gave me independence and sparked a passion that has shaped my entire career. Fast forward to today, I've spent over a decade in the field of accessibility, leading initiatives in companies like Accenture and SAP Labs, where I built Accessibility Center of Excellence and have mentored cross-functional teams. I'm also a CPACC certified and have had the honor of speaking in events like AXCON and IAAP webinars. Early in my career, I had the privilege of training more than 150 visually impaired students and helping them discover the same freedom that I found. For me, accessibility is not just a professional interest, it's really personal. It's about designing for dignity, independence, and connection. I'm really excited to take you through this journey today and show you how accessibility is not just the right thing to do, it's also smart, innovative, and transformative. Next slide, please. Let's jump in with something interactive and hopefully a little eye opening too. Let me ask you something. When you see a content like this on your screen, which version do you think works better for most of the people? On the left, we have small, hard to read text, dull colors, and confusing visuals with no labels at all. Wherein on the right, the same content is clear, well organized, and properly described. Take a moment to think which one would help you understand the information faster and less effort. Think about it. Have you ever come across content like the one on the left in your own work? This shows something really important. Good design is not just about looks, it's about making information easier and enjoyable for everyone. Today, we'll explore how to bring that clarity and simplicity into your courses, as well as your communications. Next slide, please. Let's take a quick look at what we will be covering up today. Whether you're just starting up or looking to deepen your understanding, this session is here to offer both clarity and practical strategies. We will begin by exploring why accessibility matters, not just legally, but also personally and practically. And then we will look at the diverse need of learners, including with both visible and invisible disabilities. From there, we will unpack key accessibility principles and common barriers that people face and show how small design choices can make a big difference. You will get hands on examples, explore some simple but powerful and tools, and walk away with actionable steps to bring accessibility into your daily work. And of course, we will leave time for your questions in the end. So let's get started. Next slide, please. We often think of accessibility as a specialized issue, something that applies to a small group of people. But the truth is, nearly 1 in 5 students in higher education has a documented disability. And when you include those who are not formally diagnosed or choose not to disclose, that number climbs up to around 43%. That means nearly half of the students could be navigating college with barriers we don't always see. Now imagine this. A student logs into the course portal, but the font size is fixed, and there is no way to zoom in without the layout breaking. Another tries to participate in a live discussion, but the platform doesn't support voice recognition software, the only way they can effectively communicate. Or a student with ADHD who tries to stay engaged during a 90-minute lecture recording with no interactive elements or structure to follow, and really struggles to retain any of it. These are everyday experiences for many of the students. And it's not surprising considering that 96% of US college websites still do not meet ADA accessibility standards. The impact? Only 49.5% of students with disabilities graduate within 6 years, compared to 68% of their peers, not because they lack talent or drive, but because the system wasn't built by their needs in mind. Meanwhile, one third of the faculty and staff have never heard of WCAG guidelines, and nearly half say they are unsure how to apply them. Only 10% feel that they have the tools to properly support students with disabilities. So, when we talk about accessibility, we are not talking about a luxury or a nice to have. We're talking about whether a student gets to show up, engage, and thrive just like everyone else. And right now, we are not there yet. But the good news is we can be. It starts with awareness and it continues with small intentional changes in how we design our courses, our content, and our interactions. Next slide, please. One of the first misconceptions we often run into when talking about accessibility is thinking that disability is just one thing. Maybe someone using a wheelchair or someone who's blind. But in reality, disabilities are incredibly diverse in nature. We are talking about visual and hearing impairments, mobility challenges, learning and cognitive differences, and neurodivergence like autism or ADHD. And the thing is, each one of these present a completely different set of needs. Let's bring that to life a bit. Imagine a student with limited hand mobility trying to complete an online quiz, but the drag and drop format requires precise mouse movement, and there is no alternative at all. Or another student in the autism spectrum walking into a bright, noisy lab space without clear instructions or structure. It can be completely overwhelming. Think about another student recovering from a concussion who experiences light sensitivity and finds flashy content and animation on the course websites. Or another student with a chronic fatigue who needs flexible deadlines, not because they are procrastinating, but because their energy level varies dramatically day to day. So here's the key takeaway: accessibility needs are not one size fits all. What works beautifully for one student might not work at all for another. That's why aiming for just compliance, meeting the bare minimum of ADA or WCAG guidelines is not enough. Sure, it is important, but true accessibility means going beyond the checklist to actually create environments that are usable, welcoming, and empowering for everyone. And that is where universal design comes into picture. Think about it. Ramps just not help people using wheelchair, right? They also help parents pushing strollers, delivery workers, even travelers with luggage. Similarly, captions can be a lifesaver for people with hearing impairment, but they also help those who speak English as a different language, or even for someone who's rewatching the video with the sound off. So when we design accessibility, everyone benefits. But here's the most important part: we cannot do this in a vacuum. The people best positioned to tell us what's working and what's not are the students themselves. That's why the phrase nothing about us without us matters so much. If we are creating a learning environment, digital tool, or policies that impact people with disabilities, then those people need to be in the room, co designing, not just reacting after the fact. So, understanding user needs is not just about empathy, It's about collaboration, intentional design, and the willingness to rethink what inclusive education really looks like. Next slide, please. Let's step back for a second. Accessibility in education is not just a nice to have. It's a legal requirement, and more than that, it's a human right. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, makes it clear that people with disabilities are entitled to equal access. And there are some major updates under Title II for public colleges and Title III for private ones that the Department of Justice has rolled out. That is going to affect by April 2026. These rules make it mandatory for all digital content like websites, course materials, videos, learning platforms to meet accessibility standards. That is WCAG level 2.1. On top of that, Section 508 already requires federally funded institutions to ensure their technology is accessible. But what do those standards look like in practice? That is where WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, comes into picture. These are not just for web developers. They cover everything from providing text alternatives, captions, to ensuring keyboard navigation and proper color contrast. The latest version of WCAG 2.2 even adds support for people with cognitive disabilities, motor challenges, and those who access content on their phones. I think most of us do that. Now I know what you must be thinking. Isn't it just a compliant issue? Well, yes, but it is so much more than that. In recent years, the number of lawsuits against universities for inaccessible content has gone way up, bringing serious financial, legal, and reputational risk. But beyond the legal side, this is about creating a better experience for everyone. For example, voice control navigation supports students with mobility impairment, but it's also a game changer for someone who's holding a baby, recovering from an injury, or even multitasking during their commute. Structured headings and clear navigation supports screen reader users, but they also help every student skim, search, and organize information more efficiently, especially during exam preparations. The research backs this up. Accessible practices actually improve learning outcomes and student retention. So, accessibility is not just about following the rules, it's about smarter teaching, stronger institutions, and inclusive learning. And when we approach it as a shared responsibility, we are not just avoiding lawsuits, we are actively building a learning environment accessible to everyone. Next slide, please. This next concept is one of my favorites because it really helps accessibility get into practice. It's called POUR, POUR. And no, it's not about coffee right now, but POUR stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. It's not just an helpful acronym, but the core framework behind the WCAG guidelines, which are the international gold standards for digital accessibility. Let's break it down to understand what it exactly means. To start with perceivable, it means that the user needs to be able to sense the information in some or the other way. If someone cannot see it, hear it, or otherwise perceive it, it's as if it doesn't exist at all. So think about a video lecture without captions. It can be completely inaccessible for a person with hearing impairment, or an image without alternative text. For a blind student using a screen reader, will have no way of knowing what's there in the image. Even poor color contrast can make important text impossible to read. So, the first question we need to ask is, can everyone perceive this content in some or the other way? Next comes operable. Even if the content is perceivable, is it actually usable? Let's say you have created a quiz, but the next button only works with a mouse. What about a person using keyboard, switch device, or any other assistive technology? Operable means making sure all users can navigate, interact, and participate without hitting a dead end. Then comes understandable. This goes beyond just seeing or using the content. It's about making sure people can follow and make sense of it. A web page full of academic jargons or inconsistent layout might work for someone, but for someone with ADHD or a learning disability, it can be very confusing and exhausting. Clear instructions, predictable navigations, and plain language makes the content easier for everyone to engage with. And finally, we have robust. This is about building content that works just not for today, but also for tomorrow. Technology is evolving constantly. People use screen readers, mobile devices, different browsers, and even tools that we are not even aware of. If the content only works on one browser or fails when a screen reader tries to interpret it, it's not robust. The goal is to make sure that the materials are compatible across platforms and assistive technologies, along with future tools. And here's the bottom line for poor. If it is not perceivable, it might as well not exist. If it is not operable, users cannot engage. If it is not understandable, they get lost. And if it is not robust, it breaks tomorrow. So, POUR is not just an acronym, it's the foundation of how we turn accessibility from a checkbox into an actual experience. It's how WCAG helps us move from theory to practice and how we start designing with real people in mind. Next slide, please. Now that we have covered the POUR principle, let's zoom in on what actually gets in the way of accessibility in real learning environments. Barriers come in many forms, and they're not always obvious. Maybe it's a video without caption or a navigation menu that only works with a mouse. It could be small text that is hard to read, complex jargons that confuses more than it clarifies, or a website that completely breaks on mobile devices. These are real everyday obstacles, and they affect students with visual, hearing, motor, cognitive, and even temporary or situational challenges. These are some of the most common barriers we see, from low color contrast and inaccessible audio to layout that overwhelm and content that doesn't play well with screen readers. You don't need to memorize all these right now. We'll be exploring this with real life examples in the next slide. But the big takeaway here is most of these issues are preventable. Once you're aware of them, you're already halfway to create a more inclusive experience. Let's see what these barriers look like in action. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Okay, let's take a moment to think like a student who's using a screen reader. You can see an image on the slide, but how would they experience it with the screen reader? If I do not add any alternative text at all, the screen reader would read image. That's it. No hint, no context, just a blank space in the middle of the content. It's like walking into a conversation halfway through and having no idea what everyone's talking about. Now, let's say I try to help, but I only write something vague like people or office scene. Technically, there is some alternative text now, but it is still not doing much. It does not answer the most important question: why is this image here? On the other end of the spectrum, maybe I go a little too far and say three people, one in a red shirt, typing on a silver laptop with two coffee mugs on a table, while one person smiles and the other gestures on the screen, etc., etc. Oh my God, it's too much. The core message gets buried under all the details. And that can be very frustrating, especially for someone who's listening through a screen reader. So, what does good alternative text look like? Something like three colleagues collaborating around the laptop during a meeting. Simple, focused, and clear. And even better, if I want to align it with the slide's purpose, I can tailor it. If the slide is about teamwork, I can say colleagues working together on laptop representing teamwork. If it is about digital learning tool, I would say staff learning digital tools together in a meeting. The golden rule: alternative text should match the purpose, not just describe the picture. Not missing, not vague, not a novel. Just helpful, meaningful, and tied to the message you're trying to convey. Next slide, please. Let's walk through some quick color contrast examples and why they matter so much. First up, if you look at the top row, we've got a light yellow text on a white background. Visually, it's almost invisible. If you're in a bright room or using a projector, it basically vanishes. Now, imagine you're a person with low vision. This text might as well not even exist. But just below that, we see black on white. Simple, clear, and readable by everyone, whether using a magnifier or squinting at the slide from the behind row. Now, slide over to the next pair. This one shows light gray on white. It's sleek, maybe, but fails most accessibility checks. There is not just enough contrast, but when paired with dark blue on white, it immediately becomes easier to read and still looks professional, I think. That's a win for both design and accessibility. Now, let's look at the third and the last set we've got here: red on a pink background. Visually busy, and for folks with red green color blindness, probably unreadable at all. But switch that to white on black or even white on navy blue, the text pops up. It's clear, sharp, and easy to scan. S- Sorry. Um, Especially if you are in a low light setting or using it in a bright light. So here's the big takeaway: good contrast helps everyone, not just with visual impairments. Whether you're reading in bright sunlight, on a dim screen, or through assistive technology, strong contrast improves clarity, focus, and comfort. And that is where accessibility and usability go hand in hand. Next slide, please. Let's take a quick look at these two examples. On the left, you will see that I have typed the words course syllabus. I made the text bold and increased the font size. To most of us visually, that's absolutely looks like a heading. It is naturally recognized as the start of a new section. But here's the catch. For a screen reader user or any other assistive technology user, it is just a plain text. That is because the style is still set to normal. We haven't actually told the document that this is a heading. As a result, it won't show up in the navigation pane in Word. And more importantly, a student who uses a screen reader won't be able to jump directly to the heading. They would have to listen through all the content to find what they are looking for. In other words, there is no real structure, even though if it looks structured to many. Now, if you look the example on the right, visually it looks almost the same. Same words, same size, still bold. But there is one important difference. I have applied the heading 1 style there. That small change tells the document, hey, this is a top level heading. Now, screen readers will identify it as a heading. It will also appear in the document's outline or the navigation pane, which means users can easily skip to it or get a sense of the document structure at a glance. So, what's the takeaway? Styling is not just about how something looks, it's about how it is coded under the hood. Using proper heading styles add real structure to the documents, making them much more accessible and user friendly for everyone. Next slide, please. Let's talk about links because this is one of those small details that can make a huge difference in accessibility, especially for people using assistive technology. On the left, you will see a familiar example, the phrase click here. It's something we have all used without even thinking. In documents, we use it in slides, emails, or even websites. But here's the problem. If someone is using a screen reader that pulls up all the links list on a page, which is a very common way for most of the screen reader users, they will hear a list like this. Click here, click here, click here, over and over. It can sound very confusing, right? They will have no idea where any of those links are actually going or what it is related to. It's like handing someone a bunch of keys, telling them that one unlocks an important door, but none of the keys are labeled. They have to try each one at the time, just hoping they will find the right one. And that is what it's like for users when link text just says click here. Without clear labels, they're forced to guess where each link leads, which makes navigation frustrating and very time consuming. Now, on the right hand side, we have improved the link text significantly. Instead of just saying click here, the full link reads click here to go to the accessibility tools and resources slide. It's much clearer, but even better would be to remove click here word altogether and just make the meaningful part a link, like go to the accessibility tools and resources slide. Now, whether someone is listening to the page or visually scanning it, they immediately understand what the link is about and where it leads to. Also, another huge issue we often overlook is using raw URLs. We often use https://www.education, etc., as a link. Technically, it works, but think about how that will sound when a screen reader user is reading out loud. It's just a long, tedious strings of characters. It doesn't provide useful information and it really disrupts the flow of the listener. So here is the rule of thumb. Link text should be clear, descriptive, and meaningful, even when taken out of context. If you isolate just the link text, would it still tell you what the destination is? If the answer is yes, you have created an accessible link. If not, it's time to rewrite it. And that helps everyone, not just screen reader users or people using assistive technologies. It also helps people who are trying to skim or scan key information at a glance. Next slide, please. Let's now look at how language impacts accessibility, because accessibility is not just about assistive technology or alternative text. It's also about how clearly we communicate. On the left, we have a short line, I would say. Students must demonstrate interdisciplinary metacognition aligned to institutional paradigms. That sentence might sound impressive, but let's be honest, it's a mouthful. It's full of complex academic words that are really not easy to understand at a glance. For people with dyslexia or ADHD, or even any other learning disabilities, it can be really tough to process. But it is not just about disability. Even students without any diagnosed condition may find this sentence really confusing, or it can be very slow to understand. Now look at the right. Same idea, just rewritten as students should explain how their learning connects across subjects. This version is much simpler and clearer. It communicates the same idea, but in a way that's easy to follow. It is direct, uses everyday language, and helps students focus on what they need to do, not on decoding the sentence. Let's look at another example. Compare this. Students are required to furnish comprehensive expository documentation delineating their epistemological framework and methodological justification within a fortnight of project initiation. That sounds more like something from a legal contract than a classroom assignment. It's packed with jargon and long words that take efforts to unpack the real meaning behind it. Now try the other example. Students must submit a two-page paper explaining their research approach and methods within 2 weeks of starting the project. This version says the exact same thing, but now the expectation is immediately clear. The key takeaway: clear, simple language helps everyone. It reduces cognitive load, helps people focus on what they need to do, and ensures no one is left guessing, whether they have a learning disability or just speak English as a second language. So, accessibility isn't just about tools, it's also about how we communicate. Next slide, please. Take a look at the two buttons on the slide. They look nearly identical, but there is one major difference in it. Only one of them is actually usable by everyone. The button on the left, it works only with a mouse and no other assistive technology or keyboard. If a student tries to navigate using just a keyboard, which many people with motor disabilities or screen reader users do, it is completely inaccessible. It might as well not even exist for some. Similarly, if you look at the button on the right, that is completely accessible. It works both with mouse and a keyboard. That means any student, regardless of how they navigate, can use it. This is a great example of what we mean by the operable principles of accessibility from POUR, making sure people can actually interact with what's on the screen, not just look at it. Because if someone can see a button and can't reach it using keyboard, mouse, touchpad, or any other means, it is not really inclusive. It is just decorative. Next slide, please. Let's come to our last example for today. On this slide, you will see two versions of the same document, but they offer very different experience. On the left, we have a scanned image of a text inside a PDF document. Now it looks like a regular text, but in reality, it is just a picture. You can't select the words, you can't search through it, and if you are using a screen reader, it reads absolutely nothing. For a student who relies on assistive technology, this is not just frustrating, it is a complete barrier. They cannot access the content, which means they are effectively left out of the learning experience. Now, if you take a look at the version on the right, it's the same content, but in actual structured text format. That means it's searchable, selectable, and fully readable by screen readers. It works across devices, tools, and platforms. And that is exactly what we are looking for. This also ties into the idea of making our content robust, ensuring that it's compatible with different technologies students use, both now and in the future. So the issue here is not whether the text exists, it's whether it's accessible for everyone. And as you can see, the difference is simple but powerful. Next slide, please. Let's now look at some tools and resources that can really help bring accessibility into your everyday work. The great news is you don't need to start from the scratch. Many of the programs you already use have built in accessibility features. Microsoft Office, for example, has an accessibility checker in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint that flags issues and gives you tips as you work. Google Docs has helpful features too, like screen reader support and voice typing. And if you're working with PDFs, Accessibility Checker in Adobe Acrobat Pro can identify missing tags and structure problems that might block screen reader access. Now, when it comes to testing web content, tools like Wave are incredibly user friendly. Just run it in your browser and it highlights what's accessible and what needs improvement. If you're more on the tech side, Axe DevTools offer deeper insight right in your browser's developer tools. And don't forget color contrast, a small detail that makes a huge difference, which you can easily check with tools like Color Contrast Analyzer. For those who want to go deeper, there are some key guidelines and standards worth knowing that we've already discussed earlier. That is the WCAG, ADA, and Section 508. And if you're looking for go-to resources, I highly recommend you to check W3C's Web Accessibility Initiative and the A11Y project, which offers practical checklists and tutorials in a really approachable way. So whether you're designing, teaching, or just getting curious about accessibility, these tools are here to support you, one small inclusive step at a time. With this, we are almost at the end of today's session. Let's move to the next slide for a quick recap. Next slide, please. As we come to the end of today's session, let's take a moment to reflect on where we have been and where we are going next. We've seen that accessibility is not just a legal requirement, it's about equity, inclusion, and creating a better experience for everyone. Yes, compliance matter, but what truly drives impact is designing with people in mind. We've talked about how small intentional steps like using proper headings, writing meaningful alternative text, Checking color contrast or adding captions can make a world of difference. These things might sound simple, but the impact is really powerful, especially for students who rely on them every day. And the responsibility does not fall on just one person or one department. Accessibility is a shared effort across faculty, staff, students, IT teams, and other departments as well. Everyone has a role to play in building inclusive learning environment. The most important mindset shift: accessibility isn't extra work, it's just good design. It's about making choices that are smarter, more thoughtful, and more inclusive from the start. So, if there's one thing I hope you walk away with today, is accessibility is not about checklist. It's about people, real people with real needs. And when we design with that in mind, everyone benefits. Next slide, please. That wraps up today's session. Thank you so much for being part of this important conversation and for taking that first step from awareness to action. In our upcoming sessions, we will dive into writing meaningful alternative text, making videos accessible, improving on page content, and creating properly tagged documents. Each step builds on what we have started today. And I'm really excited to keep going on this journey with you. So now let's open the floor for your questions. Thank you.
Serby, thank you so much. Let me go through some of the questions that we have. I did post several of you asked specifically about some Canvas, obviously your faculty. So I did post the link to the You Do It Advantage sessions, and I had to laugh because I tried to do it as registration for You Do It Advantage and then tag it, but Zoom wouldn't let me. So I gave you the actual URL for it. So there are lots of different questions, and we are going to save all these questions and spend some time answering them. When we send you out the recording and the slides, we will also send answers to all the questions. So some of the questions that we have here, one of them is Serby, is how does somebody know if their technology is compatible? I mean, not if
Um,
their technology, if the page that they create is technology compatible with assistive technology.
so the key thing to look here is that it is not bound or limited to any one particular platform. So, for example, even if it is used, if you are using the right guidelines or the right checkpoints that we discussed about accessibility. So, no matter what format it is converted to, it would be definitely accessible with the assistive technologies. And also, it shouldn't break the layout or the content when trying to um, interpret by different platforms. So, using the
Mhm.
right checklist that are mentioned for accessibility definitely would help you there.
So within Microsoft, Adobe, even Canvas, there are built-in accessibility checkers. And then in
Mhm.
addition for Canvas, we have You Do It Advantage, and for websites, we have Site Improve. So using those tools will, once you pass those tools, then you'll know that your work is accessible. Several of you have asked specific Canvas questions. So we're going to save those for the You Do It Advantage Canvas sessions. Here's an interesting question. One of the faculty members uses a historical text that's out of print. They have permission from the author to scan it as a PDF to share with students. How do they make this PDF accessible? How do they make sure they wait on how do they make sure that they're not copying it as scanning it as an image, but scanning it as an OCR?
So here the documents, as you mentioned in the question, like it approved for scanning the image, but for a person using assistive technology, especially screen readers that I mentioned in my session, it would just read an image. So it has to be tagged. The document has to be tagged properly, not just scanned image. And if it is tagged well, it will definitely be identified by the screen reader.
Okay, thank you. And whoops, let me keep going. How do we handle balancing aesthetics and accessibility? That's always an issue with layout because we want to make sure, we always tell people not to use tables for layout because the screen reader will read across and really tables should be used for data with appropriate um, table headings, row and column headings. But so how do we balance aesthetics and accessibility? Can I still use bold and color when I want to indicate a new section?
Using bold and color is okay until they are not only the means of providing any information. For example, if that is indicating that it is a heading, or if color is only the means of providing any information, like the text in red is good, the green is yet to finalize, or something like that. So any information which is not just provided visually, so in that case, you provide the other styles like headings, etc., along with bold and color. That is completely fine. I think then it goes hand in hand. We do not compromise the looks as well as the accessibility checklist there.
Let me go to some other questions here. Thank you. Yes, we're going to be sharing recordings. Do you have a sense, a lot of the checkers have a score. You do it advantage, gives you a score, side improve gives you a score. No one is ever going to be 100%. What should we be shooting for? And I do want to make one comment before we answer the question, what we should be shooting for. Um, we don't want to be at 0. So if you just start tagging your images and start tagging things as a header instead of only using bold and color, you're already a step ahead of where you should have been. But do we have a sense of what those scores should be that we're aiming for?
So if you talk about scores, or I would say on a legal background, it has to be WCAG 2.1 level A compliant. I mean, but I would say the best thing that you can do is ask the students what works best for them, because your student would be, if any of your student is not able to access your um, course materials or any content, then that's a big issue. So I think it's really important to involve the students rather than just measuring it through any number of scores.
Mhm. There's some questions about Adobe InDesign. I don't know if you're able to answer that. They're asking if they use styles in InDesign. Does that do the same kinds of things as using like headers in Microsoft and things like that? Will that be accessible?
I'm not sure about it, but I can get back to you on this
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so that's one of the questions I'll get back to you on. So one of the questions that we do want to make clear is they're saying if I use bold to emphasize, the screen reader won't know that. So how do I emphasize in a way the screen reader can recognize? So if you're meaning a new section, I know what you're saying here. If you're meaning a new section, we're going to tell you to tag it as a heading, 1 or 2. But what they're talking about here is that in the middle of the paragraph, they want to highlight something to emphasize it. How do we do that so the screen reader picks it up?
You can put it to quotes, the easiest way to highlight it. I mean, if you quote that particular phrase or sentence, automatically, I think it would be a little more like it would get that attention. So, and screen reader will identify if you put it in quotes.
If you put it in bold, the
No,
screen
in
reader will
quotes,
know.
the apostrophe, like in quotes, if you put it in quotes,
Oh, you mean
um,
like an HTML code?
inverted. No, 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 no. We have these
Oh.
single apostrophe and the double, um, what do we call it? We call it quotes.
Oh,
Um,
quotes?
yes,
Ah,
yes,
so if you
yes,
use single quote and double quote,
yes,
then
yes,
the screen reader will know. Ah,
exactly.
thank you. Okay, so
Yeah,
the answer to that is single quotes and double quotes.
yeah.
Okay. Um, are there some free end user accessibility tools that our faculty and staff can play with just so that they begin to understand how it works?
Yes, there are plenty. So we have, like when you say tools that people with disabilities actually use, we have screen readers, um, like NVDA for Windows. And if you are a Mac user, you already have it in your laptop as well as your phones. We have these screen readers called VoiceOver. And actually, we all have it for free in our phones. Even for Android, we have inbuilt software called TalkBack and other features as well. You can just quickly have a look in your phone, like when it's zoom in or color contrast and all, inverted colors, you'll definitely find them all in the phone as well. But if you want the list of all the tools with different experiences, we can share that as well.
Okay, thank you. They're asking a little bit about things that we use for visualizations like Power BI and Tableau. We will get you some answers on that. We're working with shared services to make sure that the third-party software that we use for a variety of reasons, that they are all accessible. Canvas happens to be, but we're working to ask the other vendors as well. Vendors fill out a form called the VPAT. It's a voluntary form on accessibility, and they tell us what's accessible, what's not, and what their plan on when things are going to be accessible um, by when. So we have a lot of questions for you, Nitesh. We have like about 30 questions in here, so give us a day or two to go through them all. Nitesh and Serbi won't be able to answer all of them because some are specific either to Canvas or to another piece of software. So we will send them out to the appropriate people who do that. We're getting to the top of the hour. I want to thank all of you for spending this time with us. Faculty will be notified about the upcoming webinars by the end of the day, and staff will know about the upcoming webinars by the end of the week. And I hope that you'll participate in them and that you were able to get a good sense of all the kinds of things that we need to do. And remember, work a little bit at a time. What are you creating new? What are you creating next? And work on those kinds of things. Like I said, if you start with images, you start with headings, you start with these kinds of things, make it part of your practice, then it doesn't become extra work. A special thank you to Serbi and our man behind the curtain, Nitesh. And we will see you at our next sessions. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.